All right. Cool. Here we go. So Career Lab Wednesday. Welcome everybody. Jane, give me a thumbs up when we are live. Great. Okay, cool. We're rocking and rolling. Welcome everybody to Career Lab Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. Our job is to help you in your career, to help answer questions, help think things through. No question is too small. No question is too big. Whether you are working on your resume and interviewing, whether you are working a relationship with your team or your boss, we are here to support you. So we take the approach of having your career, your job, be a pathway for your potential, pathway to help you reach your potential. Is your job helping you develop yourself in a way that's meaningful to you? And oftentimes we find that when I'm come up against challenges in a certain job, that I might think that there's a better option out there. Oftentimes that's true. And at the same time, if we're making that transition, we want to make sure that we are scooping up all the learning we possibly can from the place that we are leaving. So just to give you an idea of our approach, our mindset to how we are looking at careers, looking at a job, looking at the relationships that we have at work. This week in particular, we're talking about interviewing and interviewing internally. It definitely inspired Eric Miro. I see you're on here, and I definitely want to get an update from you. But we've been tracking how you have been going about interviewing and moving the ball forward, doing what you can, taking ownership of what you want in your company. And one of the things that we focus on here that doesn't always get focused on in other career-oriented services is the social and emotional intelligence side of things, the soft skills. That can even mean down to your emotional intelligence, your awareness of how you're feeling about something and what to do about that. We all have ways that we have grown up in our families, in our communities, and then when we're getting into another job or into a new environment, a lot of those things don't work anymore. So we have to be able to adjust and learn while we're working with other people on how to communicate effectively. And a great opportunity for that is when we are in the interview process. That's a high intensity environment. Welcome, Alexandra. So there's a few ways as we're getting going here that you can engage. I love it when you jump in on Zoom directly. You are able to type your questions into the chat here or come off mute and share with us and get coaching one-to-one real time. That's awesome. It's a great way that you can serve our listeners while getting benefit for yourself. So that's one way. Welcome, Alexandra. Good to have you. That is one way for you to participate. And if you can't jump in on the Zoom link, then you can always just type your questions into the comment section and Jane will get those over to us. As we're getting going here, I'll give these instructions again in a little bit. But Eric, I so want to hear how things are going. Are you in a spot where you can give us an update on the latest development for yourself?
Yeah. No, yeah. And just a quick recap, applied for this internal role, promotional role, way back at the end of February. It's been slow but steady pace of, getting through HR screenings, doing interviews, and now I have a final interview scheduled for this Friday. It'll be in person up in the Chicagoland area at a Starbucks because, again, our office situation is that we have a new corporate location, but it's not ready yet. So there's not a corporate office to meet at. But that is scheduled, set. I have, Friday off to, drive up and drive back down. Company's going to pay for everything that I would need to, expense for between meals and mileage, all that fun stuff. But yeah, so I have that this Friday, and they didn't indicate what, like, how long it would be to get a decision after that, but I would imagine I would, have the interview this Friday and then find out, sometime next week,
Yeah.
what those results would be.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, well, so we're still, now you at least have a time that you're doing it. Is there anything
Right.
you want to address today? Any way that I can help you move forward with the interview preparation?
Yeah, I'd be curious on thoughts or maybe questions to ask, because it's maybe not like a new role functionally per se, but it's a new role that they've come up with. I'm not backfilling for someone or anything like that. So I don't know, maybe if there's any questions or anything that I can ask to kind of play off of that.
So why are they making this new role?
Yeah, so the impression I get is they're trying to take a lot of the analytical and some other probably other responsibilities off from the other basically product leaders that would be a part of the team I'm on, and have kind of a basically another internal only resource that would support them. Is probably
Okay,
the
so there's
best
been
way.
a block or a bottleneck for many people around this position, and so they're saying, okay, let's just make a position where somebody comes in and this is their job and they handle it, make sure that there's not a bottleneck here.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they've used like external resources and stuff, but it sounds like the need and the desire is great enough to have this kind of role created internally and have it filled in such a way.
Okay. Well, what do you want to know about it? If this is a thing that you're going to be doing for the next, say, several years, what do you want to know?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things that came to mind, um, to where one of the things is where they see someone who takes on this role maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. Because I was checking back through my notes because I've actually technically talked with the hiring manager already. Way back when I was first applied, I had like a introductory call with him to talk through the role. But how that probably went. That's probably also a quasi interview in itself, one could argue. Then I remember, a note, that this would be a developmental role in a sense of, potentially preparing someone to take on more product management like responsibilities or adjacent in the long term. So I think just kind of future looking at where they see someone in this role potentially going or growing, in the near future. And I think probably the second thing would be if, could give a more detailed explanation, maybe even with an example project of, how I'd be interacting with, one or two or the other members of the team in a given example project. How am I going to be supporting them hypothetically, of course, kind of giving me a potential, giving me an example of how I would interact in this project, that kind of thing. And it's
Okay.
kind of long-winded.
Yeah, it might serve you to break what you're saying here down into bullet points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and go ahead, sorry.
Well, and so in terms of you developing your skills here and what's going to open up for you, how this is a stepping stone for you. What I think is really cool about it is that it sounds like you're going to be interfacing with a bunch of different departments.
Right.
And so you're gonna learn a lot, and also learn a lot about how to communicate and bring potentially bring silos together. I mean, that is a powerful thing to be learning.
Yeah, and no, and I definitely am looking forward to that. And I think it'd also be at a high level too, interacting with, the heads of the areas, GM of the other business potentially, heads of sales within the company, that kind of exposure as well, potentially at least.
And what is what's your responsibility in this? What
With relation
outcomes
to like the role.
Yeah, what outcomes are you going to be creating?
I think it's going to depend on the project and what's being asked of me. Because it seems kind of very, maybe not project dependent, but kind of project dependent. Like I'm trying to think of how to best explain it. Like maybe if there's something where they're looking to expand capacity for a certain line at a certain plant, I'd probably be tasked with, okay, what's the current state? What, if any, plans does the plant have to do anything with that line or whatever? What's kind of historical projection looked like for that line at that plant, and then work with the corresponding product manager, product leader, or leaders or folks to say, okay, here's the backstory on everything. Here's what I've gathered for you. Let me know if that helps in your decision making, or if you need me to track down any other information, and then potentially also probably be asked to, what's your thoughts on this decision based on what you've determined.
Okay. It occurs to me as I'm hearing you talk this through, that you developing what we call your regulator skills, or we could say executive communication, where you're putting out what you think and asking them if that's accurate.
Right.
And so I think the more that you can, in going into this interview on Friday, the more that you can research and come up with the sketch of what you think the role is, and to talk about it as if you're already as if you're seeing yourself doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll course correct you if you're off on something. But if in the interview, if you're looking too much for them to kind of guide you,
my
hunch is that that will have them picking up more anxiety.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because I think it sounds like you already kind of know, like you probably have a good idea of what you need to do in there. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I think I kind of, and one of the things I was, I'm trying to get out of this interview in some way. I'm not sure how the best, but kind of how, like I talk about that example, but there might be something where it's more abstract. I don't know. It's just hard to gather kind of maybe. I'm trying to think of how, like, I'm trying to figure out how to ask what I want to ask, but I don't know how I want to ask what I want to ask. But I have a general idea of kind of like at a basic level what will be asked, because I already do a little bit of that on occasion. And it's more on an ad hoc basis. Like I know there's a process engineer, one of the plants that they're working on a project, and he was asking me for, my perspective on this export production and how they handle that and all that. but I mean, that was kind of just on a peer-to-peer basis. So yeah, I have an idea of what I want to do. I think I'm just trying to find a way to be able to dive deeper into that with this interview. But I got to brainstorm and figure out how I want to phrase that without going off the deep end.
What's going off the deep end mean?
Well, I guess like where you talked about where I'm trying to have them guide me too much versus having already, kind of a command of, this is what I'm going to bring to the role, what I'm envisioning myself doing in the role, versus having them kind of just, here's what we want you to do, because I feel like for this role, it's definitely going to be more self-guided than, here's your KPIs, here's kind of more concretely what you expect. Versus
so high level, so you're an analyzer, I'm 100% sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you get lost in the thinking stuff.
Right.
And it's great because on one hand, I mean, you're gonna provide security because you're gonna pay attention to stuff that other people would miss. But you don't have to, you have to learn the skill of bottom lining and never going over making more than 3 points at a time.
Yeah. No, yeah. I am conscious of it.
So
as you can imagine,
you just going in and saying, here's my assessment. This is what, my job is. This is the stuff I would be making happen. Is that accurate? And then
I hear you.
yes or no, and they'll help guide you if you're not spot on. But I think you can really go in assumptive with what the position is and what's needed, and just have them, say, oh no, it's more like this, and then okay, great. And I think you can ask really powerful questions about, one of the questions I have is, what sort of power does your role have? Where are you at in the hierarchy?
Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. You phrased it, because that's one of the questions. Yeah, I think I am actually going to ask that. That's a great question. Because that's been one of the things that I've been interested in, but also have kind of like maybe an over-analyzer concern about.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think I'm going to ask it, what kind of power or responsibility am I going to have? Because my impression seems like at least a little bit of power, responsibility versus just kind of one of those, here's your workbook and bottom line recommendation, I'm out. It's going to be more than that, but it'd be nice to get kind of confirmation and more detail on that.
Okay. And again, I think the number one thing that people look for is initiative. And so you taking the initiative in the interview, you might use the word authority instead of power. What authority do I have? And have you watched the personality video that I sometimes share?
I don't think so. No, like I said, I did take the exam and surprise analyzer, but I don't think I've watched the video yet.
Okay, cool. I will circle back with you on that. And we can go ahead and put the personality assessment link in here for people who are viewing in to take as well. And there's all kinds of stuff on this. The thing I like about our approach is that it doesn't get too heady, and it's used to help connections happen. The joke I make is that my parents could talk about where they're at on the Enneagram for like 5 hours and never actually make contact.
So
I
hear you.
It helps streamline things.
Yeah. So, and I think I'm not really like nervous about this interview per se.
Cool.
So I it's not like we're in the past, we're like, oh man, I'm kind of freaking out, but it's more like, kind of already have a gist. I've already technically met with the person. It's funny. 2 out of 3 interviewers, like, kind of like, hinted, or maybe not hinted, but, talk about like, oh, we've been on calls together, but, it's first time meeting. But I mean, like, most of the time it's been, we were on the call, but it's not like we were chatting or anything. So kind of the level of familiarity that was implied was kind of funny to me, but I guess that's
What
probably a good sign.
what was funny about it to you?
It was just, they made it seem like that we chat on occasion about or whatever. But I mean, most of the interaction I had with at least one guy was we had just been on a couple calls together, but it's not like we had really
Oh
ever chatted,
no, but this
honestly.
is the chances that that's good is high, because what we're trying to um we as human beings, we make our decisions before we're conscious that we've made them. Their
Right, right.
research on this is so creepy. Like 6 to 11 seconds in the moment.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I've heard
so
that too.
when you've got people who are saying things like, oh, we kind of know you, like even if they don't really, it it leads me to think that they've already decided and they're trying to justify their decision.
Yeah,
To-
and
oh,
one of the other guys, I mean, like I had heard of him, but he opened up like saying, "Oh, hey, you look familiar. Have we ever met before?" And I literally had never met that guy before in my life. So it's like, I don't think so. Maybe at like a conference or something, but
uh-huh.
we had never. But yeah, so anyway, but yeah, I'm not worried about this interview.
Cool.
Um,
If you have anxieties, anxieties are good
yeah, yeah,
for to help guide you, but your anxieties are about what the role is going to be like what's it actually going to be like
right, right,
there.
yep,
And
yeah.
that's going to be your guide for what questions you ask.
Yep, yep. No, I hear you. But yeah, that's all I got. I'll hopefully have an update next week. And we'll see how it goes next Friday. Or not next Friday,
Cool.
this Friday.
Cool. Well, Eric, I am looking forward to hearing about it. And I'll give a quick recap to everybody. So Eric Mira has been joining in and taking us on the journey of interviewing internally. And one of the first things was the question of how much follow-up do I do? And this tends in most companies, there's not always a great hiring process. And so if I'm following up and saying, hey, just putting this back at the top of your inbox, I'm often helping somebody do their job. So, most of us are concerned that we are overselling ourselves or bothering people or something. And that's usually not the case. And so Eric has been taking charge of this role and really bringing himself through it and getting himself seen in the organization. And it's a really, really cool process. So looking forward to hearing about that, Eric. Now, we've got some more folks joining in here. And I want to say again, for everybody who has joined in more recently, I love it when you can jump in on Zoom and I can work with you directly. If you can't, you can always type your questions into the comment section on LinkedIn or YouTube, and Jane will get those over to me and I'll do my best to answer the questions. But we've got a few people in here. Angel, welcome. And Alexandra, great to have you. How can I support you today? What questions do you have?
Well, on my end, I didn't have a specific question, to be honest. I was just kind of curious to see, you sent me that invite a while back, and I finally was able to join a little bit today. So yeah, that's really it for now. If you want to share kind of how this typically work, what topics you cover, I would be interested in hearing a little bit about that. And also just curious about the reason of this being recorded. I wasn't expecting that, and I'm just curious of the purpose of having this recorded.
Got it. So yeah, thank you for asking those questions. I often, as I do it every week, I forget to say important things. Like part of how this works is we're streaming on LinkedIn. We're streaming on YouTube. And so any of the coaching that happens here Sometimes it can be kind of vulnerable, and the price that you pay is that it's live. It's just out there. On Zoom, I'm recording it simply in case, for a backup in case something doesn't work out on LinkedIn or YouTube. And that's that part of it. Now, so I always put out a topic, kind of based on what was happening in the last session and what I think is relevant. But overall, any questions career related are fair game. And the approach that we take here is one from social and emotional intelligence. So the soft skills that are needed in career development. And so that can filter into anything from how you do your resume, to how you interview, to how you manage, to how you manage your relationship with your boss. All levels of that, as I'm developing myself as a person, that's going to impact how I am with my team at work. Does that answer your questions, Alexandra?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Awesome. And by the way, if you're joining in and you don't, people often do just type a question into the chat and just say anonymous. That's totally fine too. So if that's a concern for you, totally get it. That I understand. And yes, and if there's anything that you want to get into that you don't want to talk about here too, you can always book a 15-minute call with me. I will serve you as much as I can in that time.
Yes, and hi, Angel.
Angel Evans, good to have you.
And I am, I'm in career transition. I actually have many years on the health administration side. And after I, finished my doctorate in 2017, I decided to give full-time academia a stab. And now I'm looking to go back to the corporate side. And one of the questions that I would have is, going through all of the positions and identifying those that I would want to apply for. And from my background, because I do a lot of career development for my students, I'm a professor of health administration and leadership, but these new HR electronic systems do a lot of filtering out of skill sets. So I had my resume ran through. I had to convert from a CV to a true resume recently, and so I would love feedback on some of the ways of preparing the resume so that it actually gets filtered correctly. And otherwise, it's about networking and meeting people within the organization that you can, give your resume to, so that they can help internal recruiters to filter through, all the resumes that they receive. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I am not a resume expert in that regard. What we'll do is we'll have Jane afterwards send Angel the links to the LinkedIn videos. So we have done work on that in the past, Angel, but that is a process that I don't think I'll be able to serve you much with right now. There are services that would just help you, get that finished quickly. So that might be the fastest for you. Now, the other side of that, though, is I have also worked with people who have used those services, SEO optimization, gotten all the keywords in the resumes, and they still don't get results. And very often it does have to do with your network and who you know. One of the problems with job ads is that it's often the leftover positions. They've already reached out to people that they, for things that might have been a better fit. And so given your success in your career already, my hunch is that your network is going to be the most useful tool for you. But that being said, there are recruiters out there and people who are scanning through and might find you and say, okay, I think Angel's might be a really great fit for what we're looking for. So, I don't think it's either or, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's both. So I appreciate that.
Cool. And you can find those, all of these are recorded on my YouTube channel. So last year, we did a whole series of resume and LinkedIn updating. So you can take a look at those and get examples of what you could do. So we'll get those over to you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I've worked with outsourcing agents in the past, and there's so many different, you show your resume to one person and that's just that one person. Everybody has their nuances of what they want to see and how they want the format, had it professionally rewritten. And then it goes to somebody else and be like, well, I would do this way. So
yeah,
the information is there.
I like a really basic resume that gives me a clear idea of what what the results are that you've created at places. That's I think that's the most useful. So what is there anything else that you're wanting support with around what you want in your next role?
Yeah, well, I'm being very strategic. So it's not about just finding a job. I know I can teach, but I'm trying to break into one of the larger consulting firms, to be honest, like an SG2, Vizient, Huron, Deloitte, and from what I understand, so I don't want to get caught up in ageism, but one of the things is that they tend to like younger individuals. And on paper, I have a lot of experience. So from speaking to some of them in the past, they'll say, well, we like individuals that we can mold and grow in our own methodology and approach to strategy. And so someone a little bit further in their career has a little bit harder time breaking in.
Yeah, okay. Have you may do consulting with them for a period of time before being hired. That might be the way that, that might be your in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So recently, like for SG2, I was like, why don't I ever say in my resume, why didn't I ever say that I've worked with the consultants before? So I added that, and maybe that will provide some momentum. But now I'm reaching out to my network. So that's what I'm doing. But still, that application needs to go in. But I think I'm going to find a better momentum with the network.
Okay. Yeah. That is, in working with people in their careers for the past 8 years, like once in a while, it's not the network, but I don't know, 95% of the time it is. So Even there was that article that the CEO of ZipRecruiter put out where he's like, look, we don't look at 80% of the resumes. So
Yeah.
what's that tell you about what most people are probably doing?
Yeah. And I have to be honest, all except for one, all of my positions over the years have been from a network, not applying directly online. I mean, you still have to go and apply whichever mechanism to get it into the HR system. But yeah, there was all but one that I actually applied to the organization. But I know, you know what, I have to take that back. It's 100% because I did know somebody internal to that organization, and they were the ones that pulled my resume out. Yeah.
Right on. Like that, this 1 minute clip right here would be something I would just want everybody to hear. So another thought, Angel, is with the companies that you're interested in, have you reached out to people working there that who perhaps you don't know and had some conversations with them?
Right now, I've started with the individuals that I do know that are internal to the organization. Yeah, so it's just those organizations that I'm not necessarily familiar with. There's so many bio and genotech companies out there. They have very interesting positions because my background is in physician strategy, and I would have no clue, you know, who works in these companies. So that's one of the challenges is like, okay, I found some very interesting positions and no one in the company.
So that is a thing where you can reach out over LinkedIn and say, I'm interested in a position, or I'm interested in this company. Would you be able to meet, you know, set up a 15-minute, 30-minute call? And people do respond to that. Now, of course, the percentages are low, but we had Drew Allison was on here for 2 months where he was going through a process. And, you know, that was one of the things he shared, was that he would set a goal for himself of how many of that type of reach out he was going to do each day. And you mostly don't hear back, but you do. Like, some people will get back to you, and that can often turn into something. So just wanted to put that out there, that if there's companies that you are very interested in and you don't know anybody in there, you can absolutely reach out and see if you can get an in.
Yeah, I you know, and one thing I have done that you know, maybe a recommendation for others is look at their activity on LinkedIn, because there's many people on LinkedIn that have profiles. So you message them and they haven't checked their profile in like a year or so.
Yes.
So their activity is going to be important, like if they've liked different things or if they posted or something of that nature.
Yes. And you doing that on your LinkedIn is one of the key things to get people looking at you and making yourself more attractive candidate for things. I don't know this, like, when you talk about ageism, certainly that's a thing. And as we're as our culture, country, and the world is in, you know, new horizons here, I think that is less and less of an issue, because when somebody wants a job done, what they're really looking for is who's going to do it, who's the best fit for that. And and people are working longer, and not from a place of, you know, in some ways it's because our, you know, the way our healthcare system and everything is set up. But there's also a lot of people who don't want to stop working because it's meaningful, because it's fun. And there's all kinds of studies that show, yeah, it's purpose. It gives us a purpose. And so if the more that you can share your passion for and make it clear that this is something that's not just about a paycheck, but that this is like, you care about it. I mean, that says a whole lot, especially for people, you know, in managing. It's pretty impossible to motivate somebody. So I'm going to hire somebody who's already motivated and cares about what they're doing. So, you know, as you can kind of broadcast that should help.
It's a good point. Thank you.
You bet. Well, Angel, thank you for joining in, and let us know how it goes.
All
Let us
right, I
know
will.
what you're
This is
finding.
my first time on. I mean, I receive your emails and everything, and I happen to be, you know, working here, and I was like, oh, let me chime in this time.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, sweet. Well, thank you for joining in.
You're
So
welcome.
this is Career Lab Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday at noon, and we invite all questions. Wherever you're at in your career, if you're interviewing, if you are working on your relationship with your team or your boss, our focus is around the soft skills, social and emotional intelligence, what you can do that might be a little outside of your comfort zone that would help you develop emotionally, or, you know, picking up more on what the cues are from others and how to communicate what you're wanting, what your needs are. So that's kind of the core of this. We welcome you to send your questions into the comments section. Love it, of course, when you can jump in directly here on Zoom. If you can't, totally get it, type your questions into the comments. And also, you know, Alexandra brought up, you know, that this is being broadcast live. So if you have any questions that you don't want to ask openly, you can always let us know to just share your question anonymously. And you're also able to set up 15 minutes with me. I will serve you as much as I can in that time. And if we need to set up more time after that, we'll discuss it. So looking forward to connecting more with y'all. We'll be back next week. This is Career Lab Wednesday, and our job is to support you in reaching your potential using your career as that pathway. So until then, you've got ways you can stay in touch with me, and I will see you next week. All right, many blessings, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
You bet. Thank you, Angel.